As the Buffalo Bills took on the Cincinnati Bengals on Monday Night Football, a tackle we have seen thousands of times occurred. However, the outcome differed drastically. Buffalo Bills safety Damar Hamlin received CPR on the field and was taken to the hospital. His heartbeat would be restored on the field, but players were distraught. Rightfully so. Many prayed, others cried. The Bills would announce Hamlin suffered cardiac arrest. His heartbeat, per NBC News, would be restored on the field. CPR lasted around 9 minutes. These were the scenes in Cincy. Folks were simply stunned.
What it appears as though happened, you're absolutely right. 100 times a weekend, I might say 500 times a weekend, there is a play almost exactly like that. A guy makes a hard tackle on a 6'4", 220-pound receiver, T. Higgins, and it is normal as anything you ever see in the NFL. And he apparently hit him at the exact perfect location that caused this event to happen.
What we saw happen tonight is not related to any sort of vaccines. This is almost certainly something called commotio cordis.
This is Dr. Brian Suterer, who went over what occurred with Damar Hamlin.
An extremely rare condition that's one of those things that we typically only think we're going to read about in textbooks. Essentially what can happen is if you have a blunt trauma to the chest that occurs at exactly the right time in the cardiac electrical cycle, your heart can be sent into cardiac arrest. This is a tracing of our heart's electrical activity. Basically, this is one cycle of the heart squeezing. Starts off with this P wave, which is the electrical activity of the atrium at the top of the heart squeezing, then the QRS complex, which is going to be the ventricles acting, but then the last phase is this T wave, where the ventricle basically depolarizes and kind of resets to get ready for the next cycle. For commotio cordis to happen, you have to suffer this blunt trauma to the chest at exactly the right moment, specifically on this upstroke of the T wave, in order for the heart to then be sent into this arrhythmia and subsequent cardiac arrest. This is one of those things that not only do you have to have a high enough force, but it has to happen within milliseconds of a time window, because if that impact comes at any other time in this electrical cycle, you're fine. You don't go into this. But when it happens at just this right time during this upstroke of the T wave, and if it's high enough, then you can have this thing called commotio cordis. We typically think of it happening in baseball players whenever they get hit in the middle of the chest with a hard thrown ball, but unfortunately that looks like what is most likely to have happened here with Hamlin.
One of the bigger stories is the following. In the tunnel, Bengals head coach Zach Taylor and Bills head coach Sean McDermott fielded calls. Essentially a serious dispute with how the league handled all this. We heard reports of the Bills and Bengals basically being given 5 minutes to warm up before presumably the game would resume. On a conference call with reporters, NFL Executive VP of Football Ops Troy Vincent was asked about the 5 minutes players were reportedly allotted before the game would resume. He would say, "I'm not sure where that came from. Frankly, there was no time period for the players to get warmed up." And to that I say this: look no further than the NFL's own broadcast partner. That would be ESPN, with commentary team Joe Buck and Troy Aikman fresh off signing monster deals to call Monday Night Football. Here's the audio from that broadcast.
Together, and they'll have 5 minutes to warm up. And Troy, I mean, you played this game for the majority of your life, and then after that, you've been calling these games. First of all, I've never seen anything like this. And then, Lisa, as we said, they've been given 5 minutes to quote-unquote get ready to go back to playing. That's the word we get from the league and the word we get from down on the field, but nobody's moving. Then when we got the update that within 5 minutes these players were going to start playing football again, we saw Zach Taylor live walk across the field to Sean McDermott. The players were being told that they would have 5 minutes to get back ready for play, and the players were standing around. We saw Zach Taylor walk across the field and talk to Sean McDermott.
That's Buck's voice on the broadcast, repeating what he had been told 4 times. Tim Burke noted the first mention of the resume play after 5 minutes came at 9:15 p.m. Eastern. The NFL could have contacted its broadcast partner immediately to correct that, were it inaccurate information, but did not. And it was repeated on air even as the broadcast show closed at 10:54 p.m. Burke also noted at 9:15 p. Eastern Time, Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow was seen warming up. To triple down on this, Buck said on the telecast they have been given 5 minutes to quote-unquote get ready to get back playing. That's the word we get from the league and the word we get from down on the field. To be clear, Troy Vincent saying he has no idea where this came from, as if it was just some fabricated social media post, came from ESPN. It came from ESPN, their sources, Troy Aikman, Joe Buck, an entire team had to confirm this before they went live with it on the air. That's how these broadcasts work. So to say otherwise and say, I don't know where this came from, looks incredibly fishy. The Kansas City Star reported Taylor walked across the field and talked with McDermott. They made the decision to take the players off the field. An hour later, the NFL had decided to suspend the game. Paxton Boyd of ABC News 36 and many other media members reported it was Zach Taylor and Sean McDermott making the call to suspend the game. As this was all going down, Joe Danman would report, I'm told Damar Hamlin has a pulse but is not breathing on his own. He is being transported to UC, needed AED and CPR on the field. Longtime NFL media man Albert Breer noted, I still can't believe the coaches had to step in to stop the NFL for warming the players back up to resume. Restarting this game at that point would have been at the level of Pete Rozelle playing games after JFK was assassinated, maybe worse. The Bills would release the following statement on their players' condition. Damar Hamlin suffered a cardiac arrest following a hit in our game versus the Bengals. His heartbeat was restored on the field, and he was transferred to the UC Medical Center for further testing and treatment. He is currently sedated and listed in critical condition. Jordan Rooney, Hamlin's friend and marketing rep, tweeted, Damar's vitals are back to normal, and they have put him to sleep to put a breathing tube down his throat. They are currently running tests. We will provide updates as we have them.
Like, I can't even describe it, but I cherish it every second that I can, every second of every day. We just had our prayer, our DB prayer we do every Wednesday. Outside, he was next to me, and I just grabbed his hand a little bit harder just because, you never know when, like, the last day could be that you getting to experience something like this, So I'm cherishing it every moment I can.
Here was Hamlin talking with One Bills Live about Dane Jackson, a fellow player who suffered a scary neck injury. The two were teammates at Pitt before going pro. Jackson's neck injury occurred in September. He would need an ambulance and was taken off the field. Hamlin spent 5 years of college at Pitt, his hometown, and appeared in 48 games for the Panthers over that span. He was a second-team All-ACC performer as a senior, voted team captain, and was picked to play in the Senior Bowl. As of this morning, Damar Hamlin's toy drive is over $4.1 million in donations. The goal was $2,500, and before all this went down last night, it was at $2,900. We are truly, truly wishing Damar Hamlin a speedy recovery. And if anything goes down between the time of this posting, I will try to update as I can on my social media. Prayers up to him.